All right, this is Spring Light's biology seminar. I'm Mrs. Webster. The purpose of this seminar is to just give you some ideas about basically answering all the frequently asked questions that we get, both about how students can prepare for biology contests and for biology at college, and just for biology in high school. Basically, I'm answering all the frequently asked questions. Let me just share my screen with you real quick. This is going to be our general outline for today. And yeah, let's get started. I think we're good to get started. Again, if you have any questions, just drop them into the chat as we go. So I have been teaching biology at Spring Light for, I really think it's 10 years. I'll have to do the math later, but about a decade. I have a master's in biology, and I've worked in labs, and what my goal has always been as a biology teacher is to make sure that students, whatever they get out of it is interesting, stays in their minds, and help them with their life. When we try to think, why is it important for any student to be studying biology? My answer is primarily that knowledge is power. And biology knowledge is some of the most powerful knowledge you can have, because your body is biological and your environment is biological. And so knowing anything about biology can help you manage your diet, your health, your injuries, who you vote for, and what laws they're going to make regarding your environment and how your environment should be protected. And not just our own health, but that of our families. And just that simple amount of knowledge, I think, is necessary for everyone. The other thing I like to mention, since many of us have younger students who are trying to think about what their careers could be in life, biology has a really, really wide range of career applications. I know we all immediately think of doctors, right? Or nurses or physician's assistants, right? We immediately think medicine, but we forget just how many sub-specialities there are, and just how broad it can reach. So for example, patent lawyers. I know a bunch of patent lawyers that find their biology degrees quite useful. Oh, excuse me. Spelling, not my forte. Genetic counseling is a field, is a growing field, is a well-paid field, is really, really cool, and it doesn't require a medical degree. You know, if I wasn't a teacher, I probably would go into genetic counseling. All right. We have, okay, so a friend of mine is a technical writer and a technical editor, but she's helping design clinical trials because she does technical writing. She started doing technical writing on a lot of doctors' applications for clinical trials, right? So in general, you can't go wrong with a bit of biology. It's going to be useful. So once y'all registered for this meeting, y'all told me what questions you wanted me to address. And a big amount of questions were about college admissions and biology. So we're going to talk about that next. Just big picture, what we should be thinking about, what are schools looking for? For any kind of biology degree, any biology related degree, and any college you want to apply to, classes are key. The harder, the better. Basically take the most challenging classes that you can actually reasonably handle and learn from. You don't want to go over your head. You don't want to be drowning or burnt out, but you want to go for the most challenging classes you have available. And this is where I'm going to drop a little bit of information about AP Bio versus AP Environmental real quick. So a lot of the local schools offer AP Environmental and AP Biology. To be clear, AP Environmental is the easier exam. As an AP biologist, you cover basically most of AP Environmental in like the first couple months, really the first month of AP Bio. In my high school, we basically covered environmental studying independently over the summer. It was the independent reading. It wasn't even like taught. And then we show up for school. We got like one day of asking the teacher questions, and the next day we got an exam, right? So yeah, some teachers run it like that. I don't, but that's one way to run it. So if you are kind of scared of APs, try taking environmental first. If you're feeling like you got this, go for the AP Bio. Just why take the environmental if you could take the AP Bio? It also, again, looks like you worked harder and are more capable when you are applying for colleges. So if it's something you can handle, I'd go for the AP Bio. Now, a lot of the students, my students, after maybe a year of biology, are pretty clear they do want a biology career. A lot of them are really interested in medicine or research, and the best advice I can give them is to get as much real world experience as they possibly can. When I was a high schooler, my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said teacher, and they said, yeah, no, we don't want you to be a teacher. We want you to be something even more. And I said, oh, okay, well, I like my biology class. Could I be a biologist? And they said, yes, you are definitely allowed to be a biologist. And if you could just get a Nobel Prize by the age of 40, that'd be great too. And I said, okay, Mom, I'll see what I can do about that. The being a biologist like completely consumed me. I took every biology class I could. I went to college. I went to grad school. I loved biology, but I also learned really quickly that being a biologist is different from learning biology, right? The job is different from the class or the exam. And that's why I emphasize to all my students that they need to get the real world experience. The more real world experience they get, the more they have a sense of, well, what career do I actually want to pursue? But also, the more they can actually put in a college application, in a resume, when they apply to a lab, when they apply for a volunteering experience, when they apply for anything, the more real world experience, the better. So the easiest real world experience to get is shadowing. And I recommend shadowing to everyone who's not entirely sure about maybe careers or, okay, biology, but like what kind of biology? And the way to get shadowing experience, it's just like you get any other kind of real world experience, you just up and ask. So ideally, you use your network, your parents' networks, your friends' parents' networks to talk. Does anybody know a dentist I could shadow? Does anybody know a marine biologist I could shadow, right? Get some connections, send an email. The benefit of being an adorable, tiny little high school child is people don't want to say no to you. People want to help you. And so all you do is send an email and say, hi, I'm thinking about this as a career. Would you mind if I buy you a cup of coffee and ask you questions? Do you mind if I shadow you for a day? Whatever. These are invaluable experiences. And as a high schooler is the best time to get those experiences. Also, when you shadow someone, you talk to them, they can connect you to their connections who might have other related jobs that you might be interested in shadowing, right? Internships, by which I mean time physically spent in a lab, time physically spent at a biotech company, time physically spent, taking muscle samples off the coast, right? That kind of internship experience is also really valuable. And like shadowing, you get that by talking to people and drawing on your connections. Often shadowing experience can lead to internship experiences. Other ways of getting internships can include a lot of colleges and universities offer like a summer internship experience or like a summer class that can lead to an internship experience. The examples I most come off the top of my head include Cosmos, and SSSIP. SSSIP is at Stanford. A lot of my students have done it. They've all found it just a great learning experience. You want to apply to these early, like the summer programs. Start thinking about the applications in December. The applications are usually due February, March, April. So, and the applications are not easy. Like, especially for the most competitive summer programs, the applications are not easy. So you want to really start thinking about them in December. Not in May. May's too late. I'm sorry. Other ways of getting internships is just to contact scientists directly. And my own students have had the experience that if they contact someone who's like working on Alzheimer's, they might not ever get a reply. People who work on Alzheimer's, like every student ever wants to work with them, because Alzheimer's is like a charismatic kind of topic. But people who are studying insect density, they don't get that many emails. You're going to have a much better luck trying to get into a lab that is an environmental type lab. Someone is asking, what is the ideal grade that a student needs to access AP Biology successful? What about USABO? We're actually going to get to those in just a second. We are totally getting to those. So ask me again in a second. Thank you for that question. If you are interested in anything medicine related, volunteering is vital, and ideally medicine related volunteering. If you're applying to med schools, one of the things they look at is, do you have empathy? Have you shown that you have empathy? And you can write, I'm so empathetic all day long, but you show empathy by actually helping people, right? So volunteering is just a thing you need to do to get into a med school eventually. And medicine-related volunteering is going to give you the most relevant experience. And again, just like shadowing, really show you that you actually want that career. That's another thing med schools look at. Do you actually want to be a doctor? Will you stick to it? Do you know what you're getting yourself into? Because you're getting yourself into a lot, right? So these are things right now as high schoolers and middle schoolers we could all be doing to kind of be preparing for a future that's interesting to us. Okay, let me pause here. Any questions about anything so far? All right. If questions come to you, just ask. Feel free. The next set of questions y'all asked me about, a lot of people are asking about USABO and AP Biology, the class, the exam, how to prepare, all of that nice stuff. So let's talk about that AP Bio test first. For those who don't know, the AP, the Advanced Placement exams, are intended to provide college credit at any school if you do well enough on the exam. They also, if you're taking a course, it's intended to recreate a little bit the college experience. However, I have a lot of students who take a class with me who are primarily self-studying for an AP exam. So they are not taking the AP exam at school for a variety of reasons. A lot of schools don't offer the APs for the younger age students. And some younger age students are really just ready to take that test, ready to get that under their belt and do something beyond it. Like if I have a 9th grader who's ready to take an AP, I would encourage them to take an AP. If a student does well in an AP exam, it can set them up for, at school saying, hey, instead of taking AP Bio senior year, what if I take independent research as a credit hour at my high school senior year? And I've already got the AP Bio exam under my belt, right? Good question. Sorry, let me answer that question. What kind of medicine-related volunteering is available for early middle school students? Oh gosh, I definitely don't know the answer to that because you know, a lot of the volunteering, medicine related volunteering students do is they might help out in a psychiatrist office, or they might help out by going to patients' rooms and just like offering to spend time with them, or help out by giving people directions in a hospital, things like that, right? And so that's mostly available to, I'd say, middle school and older middle school students usually. And yeah, I agree. Any volunteering activity that actually has them learn to help people, behave with empathy towards people, think about what they could be doing to help, all of that could be helpful at that age. But like concretely medicine related might be a little harder at early middle school. Yeah. But you know, if they want to volunteer at senior centers, I mean, folks who could use the company, they love kids. They even younger kids would be really helpful to them for having that morale boost, right? All right, so back to the AP Bio test. So why would you take that test? Oops, sorry. First off, it demonstrates interests. If you're into biology, taking the AP test is a great way to demonstrate you're actually interested in biology to colleges. It gives you college credit, we mentioned. And then if you are applying to higher tier schools, Stanford, Ivy Leagues, Berkeley, anything higher tier, AP credits are just expected. You're expected to be taking a bunch of AP exams. It might be really, really hard to get into a higher tier school if your school offers AP, but you didn't take advantage of it, because they're looking for students who love to challenge themselves academically, right? So you got to show that you love to challenge yourself academically by challenging yourself academically. All right. How to prepare? Like what's actually on that exam? So the local high schools here generally have students using Campbell's Biology as the textbook. However, the textbook they use is either the Concepts and Connections or one of the other, I think of them as the abridged Campbell. Let me show you a couple that I have over here. So this is the Campbell textbook. I have version 9. I don't care what edition you have. Any edition like version 9 and later is going to have all the information you need. Honestly, even like version 5 and 6. It's just that they moved figures around. They made it a little prettier, but it's mostly always the same material. Every new edition is basically the same. As you can see, it's hefty and the font is small, all right? But it's brilliant. It's brilliantly written. The questions at the end of the text of each chapter are really helpful. There's an answer guide at the back. This is it. This is your best preparation for AP. The abridged textbooks, I have read them. I've looked at them. I own some. They're still useful, but they summarize sometimes a little too much. So it might be really hard to learn a concept from the abridged textbook. To my students, I always recommend the unabridged. It's better to skip stuff. You know, you're like, okay, this is too much info. I'll skip this bit. It's better to skip than to not even have it available in your textbook. Can I show the book? This one. All right. Is there something specific you want me to show about the book? Oh, did you want me to show the abridged one? The abridged one is so much skinnier. Where is it? No, I don't even have it in my pile here because I don't use it to teach. Here we go. This is the abridged one that we used in my college class. So you can see it's way skinnier. The font's the same, but it's way skinnier. The figures are basically the same. But and this is 4th edition, Concepts and Connections. There's other abridged ones from Campbell that they use. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Oh no. Wait, what do you mean I'm not sharing my screen? I have to be sharing my screen. It tells me I'm sharing my screen. Y'all, can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, good.
那你这个话一点都不痛。
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. Say again. The share screen didn't show the book. Right. No, I was showing it in the video. But if you want, I could, yeah, in the video of my face. Yeah. Sorry. But you know what? If you want, I can totally share screen with it. So I actually have it right here as a PDF.
这个你话没有说通。
我怎么弄啊？哟，真是你来弄吧，这个。
All right. So, sorry, I just muted you so I could keep teaching. Campbell Biology 9th edition. There you go. Someone is asking about how to do independent research at school. So it depends on your high school. I mentioned that, and that's a good question. A lot of high schools offer independent research credits in some way. And if your high school doesn't, you can always talk to one of the counselors and be like, hey, can we make an independent research credit? Like, what can we do? A lot of schools offer like an independent study course credit of some kind. So, but that's really between you and your high school. You gotta ask for what you want. You gotta step up and ask for what you want. And don't just accept the existing class schedule if you feel that you're past the existing class schedule. You understand what I'm saying? All right. I think I've answered every question so far. Okay, so we said Campbell's Bio, the thick book. You do not need to read the entire textbook. You can read, I'd say about 2/3 of the textbook is sufficient. For those who are curious, and someone is also always curious, chapter 3 through 20, chapter 22 through 27, chapter 40, and then 51 through 55 are usually sufficient in Campbell. So you can see we're like basically skipping the 30s, we're skipping the 40s. Physiology is really not on the AP Bio exam in any level of detail at all. They expect you to understand like big picture physiology, but not the details of physiology. So generally I'd say like you can, it helps to skim to have some concept of how the body works in the 40s, but you don't need it, right? So these are the chapters in Campbell's Bio for the AP. What I suggest to my students is this: have a vocab list, a growing vocab list. So every chapter you do, write down the vocab words, define them in your own words, at least the ones that are harder, define the ones that are harder in your own words, and have that as a growing list so you can study for your finals and for the exam. And I see your questions, I'll get to it. The other big advice I have, and I think this will help most students, is how to take notes in biology. So there's a lot of different note-taking styles out there. The one that doesn't work is highlighting the textbook. And the reason highlighting the textbook doesn't work is it requires you to then open the textbook again, go to where you highlighted and read that sentence again, and probably just read the whole page. You might as well just read the textbook a second time. That's not helping. The goals, as far as I'm concerned, of note-taking are as follows. Note-taking keeps you paying attention and allows you to immediately review for retention. The act of taking the note is helping you retain the information. Allows you to review later. It also is a thing you can read later. I don't know about y'all, I hardly ever just sit down and read my notes. I usually rewrite my notes because again, for me, it's about the act of writing or producing the information. So let's talk about what kind of notes help you with this. First off, when I'm reading a biology textbook, I'm paying attention to the bold words. Yes, and I'm probably writing them down as in my vocab list. And usually I just write them down, and only like the hardest one do I actually define in my own words. It depends on how much time you have. Even if I am skimming, even if I'm not reading every word, I will always write down the bold words and make sure I can define them. Okay. Second big thing that you can do to help you with note taking. A lot of students who write notes write down any big idea. Well, in this textbook, sometimes in one paragraph, the whole paragraph, like every sentence is going to be a useful idea. You're basically rewriting the whole textbook. That doesn't help you. What I like to do is I like to read a section, especially if it's a short section, I like to read the whole section and write a 1-sentence summary in my own words of the big idea. Or if I can't summarize the big idea, I like to summarize what questions was it answering. All right. So I like to summarize what questions was it answering. Every time I take that minute, and it just takes a minute, maybe 2 minutes, to write 1 sentence in my own words, that immediately gives me an opportunity to retain the information and process it in my mind. So I'm not just constantly reading and forgetting. I'm reading, thinking, saying it in my own words, reading, thinking, saying it in my own words. That's how I retain the information. That's my most successful reading. In Campbell, you always actually do want to look at the figures. You do want to do the concept checks, questions at the end of every section, and then the answers are in the end of the textbook. And you want to do the end of chapter questions. If you do this, you usually don't need to reread anything, right? If you do the end of chapter questions, check your answers, you have your vocab list, you have your summary of big ideas, you hardly will ever have to read the chapter again. You know, for the final, just do the practice questions again and look at your vocab list again. For the AP, just do the practice questions again, look at your vocab list again, right? Maybe review your big idea note list. This is how I personally take notes. It works really well for me. When I was y'all's age, I highlighted and it was a disaster. I wouldn't recommend it. The other thing, I mean, don't be afraid to skim. Like if you look at a chapter like chapter 9 is like such an awful chapter. Like you just can't read it. You start reading it and you just can't focus on it. I couldn't. So what did I do? I looked at every single figure and every single figure legend, and I wrote down every bold word, and I still got an A on that exam because I was able to get the information from the pictures, but I couldn't get it from the words. That happens sometimes when you're studying these textbooks. It's just some concepts are easier visually. All right, let's see. I am seeing some questions that I'm missing. Right, okay. I'm going to finish talking about this and then I'll come back to some of the questions about internships. So when you read a textbook and learn information, that just gives you information. It doesn't teach you how to do well on an exam. You cannot do well on an exam without practicing the exam. It's like, you know this. Exam taking is a whole different skill than knowing biology. And each type of exam is really a different skill, especially the AP exam. Let me show you real quick. So in 2021, 7% of the students taking AP biology got the highest possible score. Now, we consider 3 to be passing. We consider 4 to be good. Certainly 4 is nothing to be ashamed of. You can definitely show it to colleges. And we consider a 5 to be fantastic, especially if you're applying to the higher tier schools. A 5 is good. It makes you look good to the schools, right? And with, again, over 200,000 students taking this exam, only 7% are getting a 5. Tells me you need to study as hard or harder than 7% of students, or as hard or harder than 93% of students to be in the top 7%, right? So how do you get there? Step 1 is knowing the biology, but then step 2 is taking practice exams. The AP biology exam itself gives you, here we're looking at the written portion. It presents you with lengthy, and I mean lengthy background information that you will have never seen before. detailed figures that you will have never seen before, detailed data, and then it asks you all these questions like justifying a claim, predicting based on given information, calculating based on given information, interpreting the experiment to identify negative control, positive control, justifying why you would use a negative or a positive control, right? So this is a deeply critical thinking type of exam. You didn't get here just by memorizing stuff. You can't get here by memorizing stuff. You need both a deep understanding, but also the ability to critically think quickly on your feet and explain using words, right? This is an essay. This is going to be 50% of the AP grade is this essay. It's not really an essay, it's a free written response, right? So you have to really explain yourself. And to get to that set of skills, you can only get there with practice. The multiple choice, you would think, okay, multiple choice at least will be a lot easier, right? Well, look at that. Here's some data you've never seen before. You have to interpret it, right? Here's a whole experiment you've never seen before, and you need to predict what the data will probably look like. And yeah, they have a few questions that are like memorization, but a lot of questions give you a whole bunch of background information, which may or may not be relevant to the question. And then they ask the question. Oh, by the way, that's another thing that, okay, I really like this about the AP exam, but like it forces you to think not just critically, but in real world situations, because in the real world, you have way too much info, and yet you still have to interpret it effectively and use what is relevant to you. They will always give you irrelevant information. And students are like, no, if it's on the test, it must be relevant. And they'll stare at the irrelevant information, trying to understand why it's there and how it connects. It's not, it's a red herring, it's irrelevant, right? It's about prioritizing what is the relevant information to the exam. So anyhow, you gotta practice. So if you in your high school have a fantastic biology teacher, you're gonna be fine, right? If you have a good biology teacher at school, you probably don't need my help. But if you're studying independently or your biology teacher doesn't have a good track record, you could probably use some support. In general, I strongly recommend that you ask around, like all the other students who are a little bit older than you. Is this teacher good? Does the teacher prepare you? Does the teacher like keep a reasonable schedule to get you prepared? And I would ask the teacher, what's your record? Did more than 7% of your students get a 5 on the AP exam? Right? Check, it's different percentages, different years. Like what percent of your students got a 5 last year? What percent of your students got a 4? You want teachers where most of their students get 5s and 4s. If you got a teacher where like half their students got a 3 or less, you need a better teacher, right? You need someone who will really prepare you. And then here's how we can help at Springlight. So at Springlight, we do an AP biology course that teaches you the concepts. We do one in the summer, and you can also do one in the fall. You could do both, but why? They're the same thing, just different times of year. And then in the spring, we do a prep course where we actually take multiple practice exams at home and then go over them in class, as well as review all the concepts that you need. So it's a combination review and practice. And I make my students take, I'd say at least 7 practice exams. I'd say if you're independently studying and you took less than 3 practice exams, you haven't practiced enough. I find the more practice exams, the better you do. And that prepares you for that AP biology exam, right? I believe this is a good time for me to pause for questions. Any AP biology related questions I can answer for y'all right now. Can I give you a hint? Prep books don't help. I'm talking Scholastic, Kaplan, Barron's. I've looked at every prep book out there. ever since they updated the exam, the prep books are not really representative of the exams anymore. We give access to all our students, all my biology students have access to actual AP Bio exams, past ones, to get practice. And your high school teacher will be able to give you access to College Board practice questions. Those are going to be the best ones. You got your Campbell textbook, and then you got your actual practice exams, and between that gets you prepared. All right. I know a lot of people really are excited to hear more about the USABO exam. We'll get to it in a second, but before, I just wanted to address a couple questions that I was missing in the chat. Someone is asking, what are good things to do in independent research that will help your future career and college prospects? So with independent research, the sheer fact that you're doing independent research is going to teach you so much. It's what I think of as like that real world experience, right? So it's like some of the best real world experience because it's self-driven often with the help of a mentor. You don't have to be doing something that's impossible for a high schooler to do, right? I mean, some high schoolers have access to a lab, but most don't. So your independent research project could just be synthesizing a lot of data, reading it, synthesizing it, writing a report on it. Your independent research could be doing some pretty simple experiments or even replicating existing experiments. But some students, if they've been thinking about this for a bit, maybe they talked to their mentor, maybe they read a lot of the existing research, they can figure out some really interesting experiments that are actually useful to do. For example, I had one student now, I wasn't mentoring him on this, he's one of my students and I happen to know what he did. When COVID hit, he was sitting there trying to use an AI to model modifications to the spike protein and predict which modifications could lead to a more virulent COVID. And as we got Delta and Omicron, guess what? Some of his AI predicted ones actually were being seen in the strains that people were getting, the strains that were more infectious. And so, I mean, talk about like a pretty sweet spot for his background. He had already been working in a lab on protein modeling, and he was already very interested in AI. And so he was able to combine that to create a really cool project, right? Like that's a cool project, COVID aside. So I'm not saying that everyone does a project like this, but any sort of independent research project is usually fantastic. Often students who've been interning in a lab like 1 summer or 2 summers, by their 3rd summer, are definitely in a shape to come up with their own project and pursue that. Sometimes even half a summer. I have some students who are so on top of it. They're there half a summer, they figure it out and they're like, I want my own project. Here's what I think I could do. They work with a professor on a little bit and then they do it throughout the year. And that, I mean, if I'm an application reader and I'm reading applications, the one that's going to really impress me, that's the student I want. That's the student I want in my lab. That's the student I want becoming a biology researcher. That they can do that at such a young age is indicative that they will be quite successful as biologists, right? Okay, let's see. Right, yes, this is a common question. So if you are interested in the USABO exam, do you need to take AP Bio first? No. If you take the USABO class, it will also prepare you for AP Bio. So the USABO class covers everything that's in the AP Bio class. So you take the USABO class, prepare for the USABO, and prepare for the AP Bio at the same time. A lot of my USABO students, I tell them you can take my AP Prep class to get practice, or you can just take a few practice exams on your own. If you've been preparing for the USABO, you're already so freaking prepared. You just need to get used to the test style. And I'd say most of my USABO students who work on USABO are very prepared for the AP and they tend to get 5s. Right. Oh, thank you. Okay. So we have a student asking about USABO and how it is like a continuous effort and all of that. And that's perfect. Let's segue into USABO and I'll make sure I answer that question. Before I do that, before I keep talking, any other questions about like the internships, independent research, or the AP Bio exam? All right. Yeah, great question. So if you've already taken the AP Bio and you feel like you've retained your AP Bio information pretty well, that's why I have this dotted line here. If you've taken AP Bio and you feel like you're strong, just come and join the advanced USABO class. If you have not, or if you've already forgotten everything, come join the regular USABO class because that'll review some stuff and teach you new stuff. All right, so let's jump into this real quick. Oh, and yeah, okay. I'll just jump into this. So the USABO exam, first off, I want you guys to remember, like when I said real world experience, contests wasn't even on this. Contests are cute, okay? Contests are fun. But contests are basically an excuse to study more biology. And an opportunity to show off how much biology you got, right? But given that if you're applying to a college, real world experience and the classes you take are going to count for a lot more than contests unless you happen to like be very successful at the contest, make finalists. To be clear, last year, nearly 10,000 students registered for the open exam in the US. I think it was 27 students made finalists. So the odds of you being finalists are really, really low, even if you study really, really hard. So don't go to the contest assuming you'll make finalist. Even if you study hard, you might not make finalist. There's a lot of luck involved, right? So if you go into the contests, please go into them because you love biology. That should be the emphasis with contests. They are an excuse to study more biology, and that's the priority with them. So that said, or if you're very competitive and you like contests, I know a lot of my students just like contests and that's why they're doing it. So if we just take a quick look at the USABO open exam from this year, let's just take a quick look over here. That's a little fuzzy. Let's try it. There we go. There we go. So this is our distribution of scores. The highest possible score is 50, but the highest actual score was 42. Now, I know a lot of you are A students, and if you score anything less than a 48 out of 50, you're going home and feeling miserable about it, right? The highest score was a 42. The average score was a 21, and the cutoff for making it to the next level was 24. So that is about 50. If you got over half of the questions right on the open, you already made it to the next level. I'm showing you this because I want to say it's a hard test. It's a very hard test. Someone is asking, how many students do I have in these classes? It depends on the year. I have often had over 30 students at a time in the USABO. I often have more than 10 or 15 students in the advanced USABO, but it depends on the year. Some years and some seasons are a bit more and some of them are a bit less. Sometimes I only have 20 students or so, or in the USABO, and sometimes I only have like 6 or 7 in the advanced USABO. Advanced USABO is usually a smaller class, yeah. All right, so that's the open exam. Let's take a quick look. There we go. Let's take a quick look at the semifinal. All right. So of the students who made it to the semifinals, there are about 120 questions on the semifinal, but often the highest possible score is a little higher. because some questions give you 2 or more points. Anyway, you can see the median score was 45. And the cutoff to become a finalist was 95. Again, really, really tough exam. And by the way, the finalists, that's like the top 26 students in the country. So this year, I'm very proud. We had 4 of students who took a class with me make it. Of those 4, 3 of them took I went back and looked it up. 4 of them took USABO and advanced USABO and USABO prep courses with me, right? And then 2 years ago, we had 5 of our students make it to finalist. And several of them had taken private lessons with me. Many of them had taken USABO, advanced USABO and USABO prep with me. And some of them just took 1 or 2 classes here and there, right? So just to give you a sense, this is a tough test. This is a tough test. A lot of the students who take class with me learn a lot of biology, but they don't do well on the test because it's tough and a lot of luck is involved. Are they multiple choice? The open is just multiple choice. The semifinal has multiple choice, true, false, and written. I know the written is just so, yeah, I mean, I'm scared of the written questions on that exam. To give you a sense of what the questions look like, well, honestly, just imagine a much harder AP biology question and a much more obscure AP biology question, but it's a lot of multiple choice. All right, so let's talk about like how to prepare. So you need to learn and then you need to practice, just like with AP. Learn the material and then practice. Let's talk about learning the material. Step 1 for learning the material is all of Campbell. The unabridged, long form of Campbell. Every figure legend. Just read the whole thing, read it twice. The first time you just kind of read it for big picture knowledge. Second time you get all the details. And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying if you do, that's pretty good start. Then here's why I offer advanced USABO. In advanced USABO, we have more textbooks. We have anatomy and physiology. For those of you who don't watch the video, I'm holding this up to the video right now. So this is the anatomy and physiology. We have botany. And I know everyone uses Ravens. I started with Ravens, but Ravens is such a hard read. I find Mouseth to be just a delight and a joy and easy reading. So I prefer to use this one. It still has all the same information, but better explained. And then, of course, we also do the molecular biology of the cell. We don't read it, though I do suggest to students that they at least skim it or look at parts of it. But we do a lot of questions based on it. The molecular biology of the cell, I feel like overall the important stuff already got covered in Campbell. So what we do is we mostly do challenging questions to force us to think about it way more detailed than before. I don't use Lehninger's, but that said, I'm always open to starting with some new textbooks, especially if students have a good experience or really appreciate certain textbooks. I think I want a new anatomy and physiology textbook, I'll be honest. So I'm going to be thinking about that before I send the email for the summers. Which grade is appropriate for a student to start reading Campbell textbook? Okay, to be clear, I've definitely seen 5th graders and some 3rd graders read the textbook and learn a lot. That said, the textbook was written for college level students. So in my own personal experience, I think a middle schooler guided by an adult or a high schooler often guided by an adult is going to do pretty well reading Campbell. Some students have just a high reading comprehension and they can just go for it. So if you can read Campbell is what I feel generally. It just depends on the students and the reading comprehension. Okay, so in advanced USABO, Do we read all of these textbooks all at once? That's a really good question. A little bit at a time. And usually like I do like half the semester on plants and half the semester on anatomy. And sometimes we'll do like, depends on the year, but usually we do like an anatomy chapter and a botany chapter together each week with some extra cell and molecular practice problems that students do independently and check their own answers at home. So you'd be surprised, we fit it all in. Because y'all, when you were doing Campbell, you were reading 5 chapters a week. Now you're doing advanced USABO, only making you do 3 chapters a week. That's like easy in comparison. I honestly, personally, I would only take either of these over the summer because then I can focus on them. But if you're taking them over the school year, like, I'm not going to yell at you if you didn't get to do one of the chapters. Like, I know you're working hard at a lot of things, but even just sitting in the class for 2 hours a week and hearing my lecture and reviewing your notes is going to teach you something that you didn't already know, right? It's not about, have I learned all the things? Because you will never learn all the things. Biology is this big and you're learning for this long. So you just can't get all of biology, right? It's not about learning all the things. It's what more do I know now that I didn't know before? What more am I curious about that I can learn about and it'll make me excited and interested? Maybe I can, it'll help me in my life in whatever way. Like that's ultimately at the end of the day, any more info you have is better. Any more knowledge you have is better. It's all valuable. So, and same thing about Campbell, if you can't get to all 5 chapters that week, it's okay. We record the lectures. You can always come back to a lecture. I accept homework like 6 months after the course is done, and I've had students come back and do more of the homework later because, they were busy and then they had time to do the homework. And I want you to do the homework because it'll help you learn. It's not busy work. It's not for me. It's for you, right? How much chemistry knowledge is needed? Oh, great question. In general, my students have nearly universally found that taking a chemistry class helps with their AP bio but even more, like you can get through AP bio with no chemistry, but chemistry really helps with USABO and other biology related contests. So my students have definitely found chemistry to be helpful. And for example, of the students who got in this year, I think most of them started learning USABO with me 2021, right? Maybe some of them took a bit more 2022. And then they got in 2023. I want to emphasize the USABO exam. You can take it every year, multiple years, and students tend to do better every year and keep improving. And with more biology experience, you tend to do better. Do I have any textbooks I recommend for AP Environmental? Actually, yes, even though I don't actively teach environmental usually, maybe one-on-one if people ask me. So tell you what, if you have a question about AP Environmental, just email me directly. So I'll just put my email in the chat. But yeah, if you're doing it independently, then I got some suggested worksheets and I got some textbooks that I like for it, but yeah. And yes, I want to clarify, like Sherry said in the comments, I do teach the basic chemistry that my students will need on like the first day of class. But me explaining to you that a covalent bond means shared electrons is not the same as you taking a chemistry class. Taking a chemistry class helps. It's not required. I don't require it, but it does help. So at some point, if you're like, I have big USABO goals, take a chem class. Most people have to do it as part of high school anyway. All right. Let me double check. What did I skip? Yes. Okay. Let me pause here. Any USABO related questions that I missed, or any other USABO related questions? All right, let's do the British Biology Olympiad real quick. So the British Biology has a challenge, an intermediate, and an Olympiad level. The challenge, I think, is a great fit for students who, just like biology, have done some biology, are not really contest focused. It's not too tough of an exam. The intermediate is a tougher exam, and then the Olympiad is the toughest exam. Any of my students who've been preparing for USABO, I suggest also take the British Olympiad. It's good practice. And some students can do very well on it. In general, the British have released practice exams, but they haven't ever released the answer guides or even answer keys. So I've been working on answer guides and answer keys for my students who are interested to get a sense of challenge of the exam. So here we're looking at the Intermediate Biology Olympiad. The top 5% of students got at least 76% of the points. You can see it's so much easier than the US Olympiad. And then if we look at the British Biology Olympiad, that's the next level up, you can see the top 5% of students got at least 63% correct. Again, that's an easier exam than the USA Biology Olympiad. Just, more students get better scores on it. And I mean, you don't know what happened on the day of the USABO. You had a stomach ache, you just got unlucky, and it was all questions that you didn't quite know the answer to. It's always nice to have another exam you can maybe shine in. Yeah. So, I mean, I suggest it. I don't really specifically prep my students for it, but we usually every year have either a prep course or a prep handout available for our students who want it. And I've been working on answer guides. So definitely by next year, we'll have even more answer guides for all the published exams. You don't have to be a British citizen at all. You just, Americans are allowed. Oh, thanks, Sherry. Sherry's mentioning that our students get a lot more gold than silver and bronze. And that tracks. Our students work really hard and they study really hard. I expect them to do well. Yeah. Oh, can you represent Britain in the IBO? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know the rules. I just know our students can take this, and then, it's good contest prep. It's something you can put on an application, just generally an indicator that you've been working hard, and it gives you something to show for that. Okay. Oh yeah, and good luck on the IBO for students taking it tomorrow. All right. So let me go back to the class explanation real quick. At Spring Light, I teach 3 classes that you can come in with 0 background. Honors Biology, AP Biology, or USABO. Honors Biology is great for middle school and high school students, especially ones that don't know if they even like biology. AP Bio is great for students who want to take AP Bio exam. And then USABO will teach you everything in AP Bio, but will be much, much more intensive. If you're not sure which one to take, come take the intensive one and drop down a level as needed. All right. The AP Bio exam is, the AP Bio class and the Honors Bio class do have a lot of overlap in content, but the AP Bio is more in-depth and more challenging. All biology is really basically the same biology. We learn cell and molecular, environmental, evolution, physiology, right? But it's at different levels of detail and depth. It's not like with math that you have to do algebra 1 before you do algebra 2. You can come in at any level and just expect a different amount of reading and practice. You can absolutely drop down from USABO to Honors Bio or from USABO to AP. No problem. We can help you with that. Now, at school, most schools offer some sort of freshman or honors biology. My Honors Bio prepares you for anything they're going to do at school. My Honors Bio students do better as a result of having taken that Honors Bio test. Honors Bio class. My Honors Bio students do not bad on the challenge and intermediate biology, British biology tests either. But if you're preparing for AP Bio, I'd say you should take at least AP Bio or USABO, take the prep class, you'll do great. If you're preparing for USABO, the more classes, the better, the better. But I mean, you can just, I've definitely had students just take the USABO, do the prep, show up for the exam and do well. I had one student, 1 year, he took AP Bio with me. And then the next year he took 3 or 4 private classes with me to do the prep. And he became a finalist on the USABO, right? So, I mean, that's him. That's not everybody. In general, students find that all of these are helpful in combination. All right. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Like I promised, it was only an hour lecture, and the rest of this is going to be all about answering your questions. I'm just going to open the door to whatever you have to ask. If I haven't addressed one of the questions you asked earlier, please just copy and paste it again, and I'll be just watching the chat for any questions you got. How many USABO sessions do I teach in the summer? I have the one class. It's going to be 15 class meetings, 3 hours each meeting. And we're going to meet twice a week. If the student is traveling for part of the summer, I completely understand. They got options. They can just come back to it, like have the videos available to them and come back to it when they can, or keep up with it during their trip. It's up to them. You will have access to the videos for a long time. I understand my students might want to take the exam 2 years after they take the class with me. So you keep access to the videos. And obviously the classroom, so I use Google Classroom to give worksheets and stuff. Even if it might get archived, students can still see everything, right? That doesn't go away. The classes are always online because we have some students coming in from the East Coast sometimes. I mean, we have a lot of Bay Area kids, but a lot of East Coast kids as well. So yes, they're always on Zoom. What's the hardest part about preparing for USABO? Depends on your personality. If you like taking practice multiple choice exams, then that's not going to be hard. If you like reading biology textbooks, then that's not going to be hard. So it really depends on your personality and what clicks for you and what you like to do. In general, I think it's always worth your time to study biology. It might not always be worth your time to study for a contest. That's between you and what you want to do. Oh yes, and I wanted to give folks a link if you want to register for any of the classes. You can register at this link, and I'll just drop it in the chat. There we go. And that just takes you to this document, this registration document, and you can register for whatever classes. And this is like the biology page on Spring Light. You got to scroll a little bit, but this is all the classes we offer. You can see the summer classes are going to be starting the week of the 20th this month, the 19th and 20th of this month, and will be held either Tuesday, Thursdays, or Monday, Wednesdays, depending which one you take. Is research experience a must-have? It is very hard for high school students to have access to resources and time to get meaningful results. Absolutely. It is really challenging to get access to that. And so even some of it can be good. And certainly a meaningful result as a high school student is not, like, I wouldn't expect a high schooler to get meaningful research results. Like, that's impressive if they can. But what they can get is still useful, especially because what they can get shows that intrinsic motivation and that passion for the topic. Like, if you actually want to be a biology researcher, then getting biology research experience is going to be great. If that's not available to you, then get what is available to you. The more you can get that is available to you, the better. And yeah, right? Like it doesn't have to be independent research. It could be an internship, right? It could be like a summer internship or a winter break internship, or there are these really cool, like, you know, like there are options out there. BBO is easier than USABO. Yes, BBO is easier than USABO in the sense that more students score higher on it. So it's easier to get more answers correct. Yes. Other questions? And when it comes to both independent research and internships, remember my suggestion, it doesn't have to be in like protein modeling or Alzheimer's or cancer. It could be in insects or environmental or taking soil samples, right? Those also count, and those are a lot easier for a high schooler to get their foot in the door. All right. So since there seem to be no more questions, I'm going to officially close up our meeting, but I'm going to stick around a little longer in case people do still want to talk. But I'm going to stop the recording. So any questions after this will not be recorded, okay?